Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening. How are we doing this evening?
Great.
Good, good. Well, welcome to our very first, it's not our very first, it's very first of this year of the 2023-2024 Jacobson Family Sustainable Impact Lecture Series. So, yay. And we are back in person. I'm so delighted to be really back in person for these events, and really also look forward to the upcoming events too as well. But tonight's theme is very dear to us. It's very dear to anyone living in LA. And it focuses on really what are some of those solutions that entrepreneurs are doing to really reinvent, the housing crisis, affordable housing market here in LA. And it's such a pleasure to have this as part of the lecture series. Our lecture series, the Jacobson family, Libby and Arthur is here. Thank you for supporting us. So just before I introduce our moderator, just a little bit about the impact about the lecture series. It's really focused on, sharing the best business practices and strategies and tools to help the world's most wicked problems. That's a lot to handle. Our panel of experts bring their diverse breadth of knowledge in social entrepreneurship and innovation and traditional business to an audience of U.S. undergraduates, graduate students, as well as a variety of different stakeholders that we have. How many undergraduates do we have? Show of hands. Okay, all right. And how many graduates? Okay, and how many wonderful supporters of the USC kind of entrepreneurial ecosystem do we have here remaining? Yeah, great, fabulous. Welcome. Well, I'd love to introduce our moderator for this evening. It's Dr. Richard Green. He's a director of the USC Luss Center for Real Estate. He holds the Luss Chair in Real Estate and is a professor in the USC Sol Price School of Public Policy, as well as the Marshall School of Business. His research addresses housing markets, housing policy, tax policy, transportation, mortgage finance, we just heard about, and urban growth. His work has been cited and has been quoted in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and the LA Times, among other outlets. So please welcome our moderator for this evening. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Richard Green.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to moderate, but I think it's going to be a fantastic panel, and I'll tell you why and all that. But I don't need to tell anybody in this room what a problem housing is in Los Angeles, and actually it's becoming increasingly so a problem throughout the country. People say about California that what happens in California, the rest of the country does 10, 20 years later, and unfortunately we are seeing that with the housing markets. Is Salt Lake City has become a very expensive market, and that was unimaginable as recently as half a dozen years ago. One thing that's striking to me is, but I was looking at a map this afternoon because the Luss Center has taken over a project that I really love called Neighborhood Data for Social Change. You can Google that, and you can make any map of LA County that you want, the census tract level. And what I have this afternoon is number of vacant units in each census tract in LA County. And basically, in no census tract in LA County are there more than 60 vacant units. So to put that in context, there are about 4,000 people who live in a census tract, a little more than that, but we'll call it 4,000. Household size in Los Angeles is about 3 per household, a little less, but I'll just stick to 3. So that's about 1,300 to 1,400 housing units in a typical census tract. And in none of them are there more than 60 vacant units. So that's a maximum vacancy rate of about 4%. And we said there's this thing called the natural vacancy rate, which is the vacancy rate at which rents either go up or go down, right? And that tends to be about 5 to 6%. So it is ubiquitous in Los Angeles County that there isn't enough housing to keep rents from going up. I mean, right now we're in an economic circumstance where the rents have pulled, but they still haven't, it's sort of flattened out. But I expect that to be a very temporary phenomenon. And so we need to build more stuff, and we need people with the imagination to do it. And that means people who are sort of outside the normal realm of government subsidized housing, where it is now costing upwards of 700,000 to 800,000 units to build it. But also outside the realm of for-profit developers whose only concern is making as much money as possible in a conventional way. And so what we have is two women tonight who, using different models, have done that. And I have to say, we had a pre-call about a week ago where they talked about their businesses, and my mind was just blown by what they're up to. And so that's why I'm very excited about this panel today. So I'm going to start this off with a very easy question, which is to ask both of our panelists, and I'll just introduce you one at a time, what it is their business does, what is their innovation. And we're going to start with Andy Israel, who is the founder and CEO of RxLA, a very clever name for a company, who is also an alumna of USC and the Master of Science and Social Entrepreneurship program. I learned today from the very first cohort of that program. And Andy, tell us what it is you know.
Well, first, I'm really happy to be back on campus. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Libby and Art. He and I were in the first over together, so it's a pleasure to be with you. So RxLA, the name, yes, as you mentioned, is sort of filling a prescription for affordable housing in LA, and also a play on the relationship between housing and health in LA. Can you hear me? Okay. So I developed affordable housing. I used to do this at a nonprofit downtown, a bigger nonprofit downtown, where we were developing permanent supportive housing, which is housing with on-site social services, and it's permanent apartments, not temporary, not shelter. And the on-site services are there because it's for unhoused people who have high needs and medical complexities. The services are ongoing as well. And at the nonprofit I was at, I was doing this using all of the conventional financing models, tax credits to local, state, and federal sources. And it's really hard. We made really good products, great buildings, but the sources were incredibly difficult to use and to layer, and it was really slow and really expensive. And our crisis, our lack of affordable housing, which is one of the biggest drivers of homelessness, became so big that all of these public financing programs weren't going to make a dent, but not enough. And while I think that those models are still incredibly important and need to be maximized and utilized as much as possible, I thought there had to be more ways to do this. And in particular, I was interested in exploring private financing models, where instead of layering all of these government sources, it would be structured more like a market rate deal with debt and equity, and then also some grants, but that equity was going to be from impact investors instead of regular investors. And so I wanted to build the building using all private financing, and then I got to partner with the government on the operating side, because it's impossible to operate this kind of housing without that government partnership. But doing that, I have been able to build at less than half the cost of the average cost without using private and without using public funds. So my goal was to build the same type of product as what you see through the conventional model, the same high quality housing, doing it just with a different financing model, and do it faster, more efficiently, and more cost effectively. And I just finished my first project, so I'm in the really early stage of my company, but it wasn't faster, but our big success was that we could come in at less than half the cost.
Wow. So I'm going to come back and ask you how you did that in a minute, but I want to turn it over now to Ethan Knight, who is the Solar Impact, which is right in our neighborhood around here. Again, a remarkably fast-growing company, whose focus is on, providing affordable housing, but without any subsidies, again, in the construction process. Now, you do use subsidies on the, when you're actually renting people, but tell us a little bit about how your company developed and how it got to where it is right now.
Absolutely. So first of all, it's so great to see all of you all, it's amazing. I went to Cornell University, and every time there was someone from within, the practicing world, I would be like sitting right up front. Wanting to know it's like, so it's amazing to kind of give back in a way. And thank you for making this possible. So little about Solar Impact. Solar Impact is a minority Black owned company. We operate in South Los Angeles, headquarters. And I will invite you all, if ever you get a chance and want to visit us. The campus is called Beehive, which has really become a cultural hub in South Los Angeles. About the company and what we do. So we're a private equity real estate group. We're a family of funds. We raise the capital from private, it's private capital, so no taxpayers' money. We raise the capital and then deploy it quickly to build high quality, much needed affordable housing in Los Angeles and San Diego in the Valley. So right now we're in Southern California. One of the unique things about Solar is unapologetically we're here to return the investments and make the returns for our investors, but unapologetically we have a social impact arm that comes along with us, and it's part of the Solar Foundation. And what the social impact arm does, it provides the wraparound services to the tenants or our residents that we serve. And that's the unique model. The motto is give a hand up, not a hand out. And we build in Black and brown communities. It's where you see no sidewalks or sidewalks end. That's also where the infrastructure ends. But if you ask me, that's where the rainbows begin. So it's very, powerful in terms of what Solar does, but I'm excited to get more into the conversation and tell you more about what we do. Yeah.
So, less than half the cost. That's an extraordinary. So tell us a little more depth, both on the financing side, how you save money, but also on the physical construction side. There must be some in order for you to bring this units into the company.
Made everybody, my contractor crazy about keeping costs down. Yeah, there are a lot of differences. So I guess it makes sense to first explain a little bit about why it's so expensive to build using the conventional model.
Yeah.
For the type of housing that I built, which is supportive housing, again, the housing coupled with the social services, which is that targets a more vulnerable population. And I can talk about more about my population later, but for this type of housing, it's expensive to operate, and in terms of getting the financing, you end up having to layer different pots of money, different pots of government money. And they always involve the low-income housing tax credit program. And then they typically involve anywhere from 2 to 8 other pots of government money. And every single one of those pots of money has different timeline and different applications, different population requirements, and it's really hard to do. And as you add more sources, which you need because it's expensive, you increase your lawyer fees because they have to keep adding in costs. And when you increase those fees, then you increase your contingencies and the costs go up. Those are just some of the soft cost examples, but in terms of actually building, when you use those public money, it triggers prevailing wage rates. So that means that the payment standards for everyone who's actually doing the on-site construction are set by the government, and they're typically a lot higher. I can't remember the last number. I can remember about 30%, 35% higher in LA for the costs to build. And so that's really one of the main barriers and one of the main cost increases. And so it's unfortunate because it comes from a good place, right? But the unintended consequence is that it makes it really hard and expensive to build cost effectively. And so that, because I'm not using government money, I was not subject to prevailing wage rates, and my building was built and all my contracts were done using market rates. So that's a weird one. It's not like it's something I'm proud of, but it's also a way to get over one of the big barriers and actually get more housing built. So those are some of the main ways. And then also bringing grants in. Typically, we have an incredible network of foundations, foundation leaders in LA in particular, and they are huge supporters of this work, but usually it's more at an organizational level and less kind of project specific level. And for my first project, because we were launching this new concept, I was able to work with some of them to actually invest in this first project as a way of investing in this concept. And so because I was able to get some of that grant money, that really helps on the back side as well. And then of course, my equity came from impact-oriented investors who were willing to take a smaller financial return because they were also, like my company, mission driven, and there are financial benefits, but they are small. We're figuring out that out right now as we get started. But yeah, that's how we got started.
So, Eka, can you tell us a little bit about how your financial structure works? So you again have equity and debt.
Yeah.
Where do you source each of them? And are the expectations for your equity investors any different from those that would invest in the other kind of real estate?
I want to say yes, they are, and they're okay with a small return, but no. I think Andy brought up a great point, right? It's all about the cost per unit. If you look at the overall problem that we have today in terms of the housing gap, there's 1.2 million affordable housing units short in California. If you isolate it just to Los Angeles County, it's 468,000 units. If you look at how many we delivered over the past 3 or 4 years, on average in the county of Los Angeles, we deliver anywhere between 10 to 11,000 units. If you look at that, look at 460.
Is that affordable or is that all of you?
That's the point. It's all units.
Yeah.
Because yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And now if you isolate that to the problem that we have, which is a gap of 468,000 affordable units, we all could keep building this over our lifetime and not fill the gap, right? And we know there's more that's needed. So to solve the problem, Sola's approach is unique, where we said, hey, the best way to kind of really address this problem head on is to bring private capital to the table. It's not easy, and like you said, right? But we started small with high net worth individuals. Our Fund 3 and Fund 4 that have large institutional capital financing, like CalSTRS, PayPal. I think everybody's now aware of where the need is and what needs to happen. The capital, also there's a lot of ESG requirement now, that's been enforced upon by the government, especially in Europe, if you look at like Finnish capital, a Swedish capital, German capital. ESG is a must, and impact investment is a must for those groups. So a lot of interest from those groups, trying to bring affordable housing or make a dent in the big problem that we have. So that's a capital stack. In terms of debt is, you know, our go-to marketplace, lenders. We're in a challenging time.
I'm just gonna add towards that drawing
Yes.
up right now.
Yes, thank you. We're in a very challenging times from a debt perspective, you know, while we have some great tailwinds happening from a government standpoint to really bring as many affordable units in as fast as possible. The challenging headwinds are from the debt side. The interest rate, if you all have heard, you know, is going up. Banks are failing, a lot of challenging times from a debt perspective. I've heard from other developers that there are currently pencils down. Because the deals are hard to pencil, the construction costs are not rising, you know, supply demand shortage. While they say has caught up, has technically not caught up. We also have a labor shortage. So all of this is adding to the construction costs. The land prices have skyrocketed. You know, what I like to say about Los Angeles, if you look at us, we're like a sliver, right? There's ocean on one side, there's mountains on the other side, and there's only so much you can build.
And there's lots of single family zones.
And exactly, thank you. And to quadruple that, it's the zoning, which is a problem. So I don't think the costs are coming down, you know, but it's really kind of coming up with these creative solutions like Andy's company does, it's all impact us to really help solve the problem. But those, going back to question, equity and debt. So yes, our equity is partly sourced from high net worth individuals and institutional capital, and the debt is, you know, bank debts, Wells Fargo's, FRBs, PayPal's, PNC.
Richard, this cycle of the debt rates, I have started to hear that it's going to start to get better towards the end of the year. Is that something that you have been looking at?
It depends on what the Fed does. And with the gasoline prices today, I don't see the Fed easing because everything, I mean, all construction lending is tied to SOFR, which is tied to federal funds rate. So if I could get inside Jay Powell's head, I would tell him to do some different things, but I don't think, you know, he has any space in there for me. And the problem is, as Ekta said, is it's not so much that lenders don't want to lend, it's that when they look at the takeout that you need, and I'm sorry, for people who are not real estate people, you get a construction loan from a bank. And that construction loan's interest rate is based on usually what's now SOFR, it used to be LIBOR, basically a short-term interest rate that's whose foundation is the rate that the Fed sets. And when you're done with your construction, you get what's called a permanent takeout loan, okay, which is a longer term fixed rate loan, usually with a term of 5 to 10 years. And 2 years ago, when interest rates were so low, it was very easy to get a takeout loan that was bigger than your construction loan. And that's how developers made money, actually, is they got cash out when the building was completed. Now, because interest rates are, you can't get that takeout loan to take out your construction loan. You started a building 2 years ago and you owe money on the construction. What you can get in the market right now, because your payments are so much higher because the interest rate is so much higher, is not sufficient to replace that construction loan. And so, you know, banks are already stuck with what they've done. They're not eager to do more of this. And so there's this view that, yeah, we'll make you a loan if you can show me a takeout lender, a permanent loan when the construction is done. And the developer, and this is in any kind of development markets, well, I can't do that right now, and that's where the pencils down part comes from. So I don't think it's that banks are being arbitrary about this. I think it's they do the math, like, at least we hope they can do that, right? It's when they don't, we really get in trouble. So yes. So Andy, yeah, I don't think it's gonna be relieved anytime soon, but we can all hope. Write your Federal Reserve Board member and tell them to cut this out. I don't think that'll have any impact, but there's where you are.
I got really lucky when I got my.
Your timing was just right, yeah.
Sort of, but when I got my construction loan, when I closed on it in 2020, I built into my construction loan agreement an option to convert it into a permanent loan at the end of the project. And if the bank was required to do that, but I was not required to take it. And it was like a high rate at the time. So I was like, oh, we're never gonna use that. We're just gonna go to the market and get something way better. And we'll be able to get a lot more cash for the loan at that time. And it turned out that it was a way better rate.
So good. And Andy's,
Get more money.
and Andy is also living proof now that even if you care about social impact more than anything else, you should go to this school for a while. So I am curious about so I want to ask one more question about the financing. So and I asked you this on the call. So solar impact, it have a typical limited partner, general partners structure where the GP gets a return after the LP meets a certain threshold return.
Yeah.
And are you, is that money being plowed back into new projects? Is that been the principal source of your growth? Or is it that you're just going out and getting more equity partners?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are a fund. And I'll get into the various different structures, right? So if you're a joint venture, if the structure is an individual joint venture, you have an LP capital. And on a deal by deal basis, there's opportunity to recycle the money. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah.
So you can remove it out of one project and go to another project and kind of, really recycle it. We have a 7 to 10 year hold period. So we don't recycle it as much as you would for someone like a merchant build model, right? Where you're done, you're stabilized, take the money out, like I said, firm loan. Put on perm debt and take all that equity out and go put it in another one. For us, it's a little different because we're more of a 7 to 10 year hold. What the partners are looking for is, and going back to what you said, upon perm loan, there's a certain amount the cash goes back to them. At one point, it used to be around 85%, of cash returned. Now, given where we are in terms of the capital markets, it's very much close to 50%, or so. There was a point in time 3 years ago when I was doing deals, the interest rates were at 3.25%. And the perm loan offered by that same lender was 3.5%. Today, just for example, it's more than double. We're underwriting deals at 8%. And going back to what Richard said, it's LIBOR, SOFR plus 200 or 300 bips. That's the spread that we're looking at because the lending will also wants to make money. Yes,
They got another bridge loan for 8.5.
there you go. Yeah. So I think it's becoming increasingly difficult to recycle the money at this point in time where we are. And if you go long on the deals, you're better off because then you have a steady cash flow coming out of the deals. But the merchant build models or the joint venture models are also where they're pencils. A lot of developers are pencils down because there's really not enough money to kind of, pull out of the deals and property.
So I want to change because this is getting depressing. So just quick editorial comment though is the Fed is trying to fight inflation. 40% of inflation comes from rent. And what they're doing is ensuring that the pipeline of multifamily is going to be smaller than it otherwise would be.
Yeah.
So I think they're kind of undermining their long-term goal is to, I mean, housing is the inflationary problem in this country. There are others too, but most of the supply chain stuff is actually calmed down. We're guessing this month. But just putting it out there.
Also, a lot of the existing stock is going away every year.
Well, and so that's where I want to, so the next question I wanted to ask you about is location, and I'm going to start with that the first this time. I started with Andy before. So tell us about where the Beehive is,
Yes.
what it used to be, and
Yeah.
how you came, or how Martin came to see
Yeah.
that as the place to be.
Yeah, so Beehive is south central and BH. It's right in the Watts community. It used to be the Goodyear track. When Martin, our CEO, founded it, it was someone on a treadmill just before COVID. They're like, oh my God, this property is for sale. But it's beautiful old warehouses, brick warehouses that they purchased. It's a 5-acre lot, and what we say is it's our love letter to South Los Angeles. And I'll tell you a little bit about the Beehive. 5-acre, right during COVID, you know, everybody's like, you're crazy, you wanna build this co-working style space, you know, nobody's gonna come here. Nobody's gonna ever work from office. Little did we know what it's going to become, and, you know, gets a lot of coverage in LA Times and Wall Street and all these articles. But one of the unique things that we did at Beehive, or Martin and Gray, the co-founders did at Beehive, was they went out and the labor in work to renovate the Beehive was brought from within the community. So during COVID, a lot of people were losing jobs, and what they did was they recruited from within the Black and Brown community where Beehive is today. There's a building called Radiant that was converted into a welding school. So if you come on over and we'll show you, you know, like desks, all of those are made out of metal. But you see some, you know, where you, like the joints are a little bit crooked, you know, but these days people pay more for that, by the way. But that was just people learning, you know, learning the skill and the trades. And today, when the Beehive is done, majority of them have gone back to work with a general contractor where they became, they're upskilled and are, you know, making a lot more than they did before COVID. Beehive is a place where we have a Kedron Health Facilities. It's a nonprofit that, you know, brings health services to low-income communities. It's also a place that caters to the youth for their mental issues. There's also another facility that caters for the adults, but we partner with a lot of nonprofits. Kedron Health is one of those. We have a women-run yoga studio over there. We have a female-run a food pharmacy, which is bringing fresh food to that community. We also have a Black-run brewery that's currently under construction at the Beehive. There's something called Black Flea Market that happens once every month, and you know, I invite you all to come see it. But these are local Black and Brown entrepreneurs who come and showcase the work. There's also something called what is I'm forgetting the name of this event that happens once everyday people. Thank you. Oh my God, I'm like, how is it that I'm blanking on that? But yes, it's a cool place. If you come there, like wonderful, beautiful looking people dressed. I feel like I'm like out of the place, but I call it a Black Coachella. You know, that's how I explain it, and it's phenomenal. There's Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, who spotted there. Snoop Dogg was there. Paris Hilton was there. A lot of celebrities who show up at the Beehive. But that's also where we operate. You know, that's where we build affordable housing from. All our projects are within 5-mile radius of the Beehive, so we really live and breathe the community that we serve. We also have something called the Solar Tech Center on the Beehive campus, and this is a place for residents in the greater community and the kids to come in and learn. And our goal is that if there is a Mark Zuckerberg tomorrow, we're hopeful that they would come from the Black and Brown community of South Los Angeles.
The good parts of Mark.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the strategy is, it's chocolate on a broccoli, right? Where the kids come into the tech center, there's a lot of video games, but at the end of the day, the goal is to show them what's behind these video games. They can take the STEM lessons, they can learn how to code, they can learn how to create graphics. There's also a jam room where they can learn how to, create the music for it, and it's sponsored by Riot Games. We also have a partnership with Live Nation, so everybody who's following, what's her name again? Sorry. The tour, Taylor Swift.
That's how she always.
I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, but Live Nation partners with Beyonce, Taylor Swift, and they're really killing it out there. So these are the things that the kids who come to the tech center have access to. Yeah, so I'll stop there. Long story short, but that's what.
No, it's, so I gotta tell you, I think I got in trouble with USC Communications when the University Village opened. They wanted me to give a quote saying that that was the biggest development in the history of South LA. And I said, I can't say that because the Goodyear plant was the biggest development in the history of South LA. And since then, I have never been asked to give a quote about anything. So Andy, tell us about how you chose your location, and were there challenges with entitlements, or was it all zoned appropriately, etc. Just how did you decide to do what you did where you did?
I spent over a year looking for properties myself, because every time I got brokers involved, they weren't able to meet all of the needs that I had. They were sites that would require really long-term zone changes, or sites that were just too small, or in areas that I just didn't feel like were a good match. And then one day I found this property. It was a metal warehouse workshop, and it was at the edge of a cul-de-sac of a residential street with mainly duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. And then there was actually one 3-story, 33-unit affordable housing family development just across the street from the site, and a tax credit building. And so that sort of made me feel like, okay, this wouldn't be super weird to put a much bigger building at the edge, because there's sort of already that type of building here. And at the edge of the cul-de-sac, there is also, it's the Metro Blue Line. So it's a 9-minute walk to the station, and that was something I was excited about too, in retrospect. It was very difficult to share a property line with Metro. But that was also an opportunity for our building, like to, build a much thicker wall, much thicker soundproofing for our residents, but also for the neighbors. And so we turned it into some types of benefits. And then we also designed the Metro facing wall to be a mural wall, so that passerbys would be able to see some public art. We haven't gotten there yet, but one day we will, so that's exciting. And cost. I had to find something that could meet my cost needs in order to make the project feasible. So that's part of, what next issue is, how am I going to find something that can make this model work again, which is going to be challenging. But this site had what I needed, and had the costs that I needed. And as I mentioned, it was an industrial warehouse, so it was operating under a non-conforming use permit, meaning it was a business and it wasn't supposed to be there. And the county informed them that they were no longer going to renew that permit. And so the owners of the business had to sell. And so that's why I ended up getting lucky and getting this property. And then the other thing is, I did this by myself with as few consultants as possible. And I'm kind of a intense nut about researching everything. And when I did my entitlements, I went really hardcore. I read everything, and then I went to the planning department and I said, I have all these questions about these specific policies. Who can I talk to? And they were like, well, you can email this person and maybe they'll get back to you. And I was like, no, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for them. And it worked. And I met this amazing woman who actually got so excited about what I was doing and took me into one of the conference rooms and told me all these things to look up and all of these state policies that were not secrets, but just weren't really well known, but actually would override some of the county policies. And through that process, I was able to get a 325% density bonus. And I don't, if that's out of context, an affordable housing development is usually can get like, in the past to get like maybe 50% density bonus at best, but right. So it was really, that was like pretty epic and helped make the project work in pencil. So it pays off to put in that painful effort.
But that is for people who might be real estate students out there, that is being willing to look at parcel after parcel after parcel and rejecting a lot is one of the keys to being successful. Yeah, I can feel your pain, right?
Yeah.
It's wafting over the. It's no, it's a good thing. You gain from it. Okay, I could keep asking questions, but I told you to open it up to the audience, so, yes, sir.
My question has to do, given how long it takes to build even one unit, go through all the permitting. You talk about the feasibility of converting like adaptive reuse office and residential. Maybe you guys can address the adaptive reuse issue. Whether that's cost effective or whether it's prohibitive.
I can speak to it. One of the things and we looked at this because, there's a lot of tailwinds on this whole office to resi conversion. One of the challenges with that is, a lot of residential buildings are concrete buildings. And when we try to add residential, break it up, you have to go through the concrete. It's expensive. That's the biggest challenge over there. Also the floor plan with the floor plates, footprints, thank you, are not always aligned with, some of housing types because, this is like 60 foot and we're looking at what 25, 50 foot. So going back to something that Andy brought up very early on is to really keep the cost low, right? The way to really build and scale it is to have the whole process more standardized, rinse and repeat. That is Sola's mantra. Actually, all my units pretty much look the same at the end of the day. It's the same white shaker cabinet with the soft close, the same refrigerator, the same sink with low flow plumbing fixture. That gets repeated over and over again. That gives us economies of scale. The residents that we serve are majority single moms with a child, or a single dad with a child, or parents who are young couple who became parents early on working multiple jobs. And the best floor plan for them is a 1-bedroom floor plan with an open kitchen, living, dining, condition where the mom can cook, make sure her 2-year-old is okay, and still have the bedroom of privacy. So we have that one go-to floor plan that we keep repeating over and over again. And then when you look at, going back to your question about, feasibility and forcing that into, something that's already there, it's a challenge.
Well, because if you convert office to residential, then the rent would be too high. Because of cost of conversion,
Yes,
where at the back end of it, you have to
Yes.
charge more in rent, and then
Yes.
people can't afford it.
yes, exactly. It becomes unaffordable at the end of the day then, yeah.
And you need some. Okay, no, it's really complicated. I mean, I tell a joke that if you could figure out how to have virtual sunlight,
Yes,
you could make office to residential conversions work much
Yes.
more easily,
Yes.
but.
yes.
I don't think we've gotten there yet, even with the metaverse is not there yet. I was asking, do we have people on Zoom?
We do have people on.
If there, do we have a Zoom question? I was instructed to make sure that Zoom people are not neglected. Okay, all right. Other questions for the audience? Well, I mean, I have more, but yeah, sir. Yeah.
The need for units, what is the unit, a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, what is the sort of unit that you're planning?
The unit mix or, okay, great question. It depends on the location, so, we're like Andy, similar to PFP, we guys are hands-on, we, roll up our sleeves and get into the weeds. We do not rely on consultants or brokers to tell us what it is. And there's a heavy market research component that happens upfront. Something in South Los Angeles by Avalon and Gage is a 1-bedroom configuration with minimal studios. Why 1 bedrooms? Because there's a wait list for, people who are trying to get into a 1-bedroom. However, something that we've built in another location that has a heavier, Hispanic population where the families kind of tend to live together, is a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom configuration. So over there, it's 1/3 1-bedrooms and 2/3 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. So it really depends on, the location of the project and what the requirement for the group or the community out there.
I think it also depends on what population you're housing. So my building, South Central, is specifically 100% affordable or 100% formerly unhoused. People experiencing homelessness, and in particular, it is, we have 2 different programs from the county that are sending residents to us. One of them is individuals who are frequent users of the county health system, who rotate through all different sorts of county systems, whether it's the emergency room, the jail, rehab, and just keep cycling through all of these systems. And those have really intense medical complexities, behavioral health complexities, and those folks seem to do better in 1 bedrooms and just being on their own. And then our other population is people experiencing homelessness who have serious mental illnesses and as a result of some type of issue with their mental illness ended up in jail. And it's a diversion program. And so those folks are also primarily individuals. And so my subsidy partner, the County Department of Health Services, wanted to cater to their population. And so my units are a mix of studios and 1 bedrooms. And so it depends on the population. There's a lot of affordable housing where they try to do shared housing, and that's not going to work for the folks that I'm serving, but it might work for younger people. So there's a lot of factors going in.
So I'm curious about, so all of your units are affordable units, and by that, they have to be afforded by what year unit?
So I have a covenant with the county that says that all of my residents have to be at or below 50% of the area median income, which is actually pretty generous.
And it's 40 a year, yeah.
Most of my residents are anywhere below 30. We have a bunch of residents who come in at $0 income in the beginning, and then through our services, we can sometimes get into programs.
So there's a reason actually so I don't know, you use section A, do all your units have section A tenants or do you have a mix of them?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the composition of your tenants.
So there's mix, we do 100% affordable, which is 80% of our portfolio is 100% affordable. We also have market rate projects along the Crenshaw corridor.
But then the whole project is market
Yes.
rate.
It's mixed, actually, it's mixed income, it has covenanted, 22% to 30% depending on. TOC requirements, which is serving 50% or below AMIs. We do use Section 8 vouchers and 90% of our residents experience homelessness at some point.
What share did you say?
90%.
90%.
Yes, have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. 85% are at 50% or below AMIs. So our goal is to serve the most vulnerable population. To bring as many units as fast as possible.
Okay, do we have our Zoom question?
Yeah, so, okay, this question is for a solar impact. I think it was touched on with Richard's question about recycling funding. But essentially, your investors have a hold period. When they want to withdraw funds or cash out in say 10 years, what does it take outsourced? And if the sale of a building is part of the equity raise, how is ongoing affordability ensured?
Yeah, great question. So similar to Andy's, our projects are covenanted affordable. Our projects are covenanted for 55 years. At the affordable levels, they were entitled for. And what was the other question about how the equity is returned back?
Yeah, and if sale of a building is part of the equity raise, how is the ongoing affordability ensured?
Right, so the affordability, even after we exit, whoever the buyer is, has to maintain the affordability. So the affordability is maintained through 55 years because of the covenanted, the covenant agreement. Yeah, so it's a responsible sale, right? You will not sell it to someone who is not going to maintain that affordability. Yeah.
Yeah, just sitting in a poll on what is the entity required in the covenant?
What is the entity required in the covenant?
Required in the
Are you
covenant.
required to do a covenant?
Yeah.
Who enforces?
Oh, it's LA County, so we record the covenant with LA County.
And to get like density bonuses,
Yeah.
you have to have these covenants in the titles, so it's, there's a trade-off. It's not that you're covenanting it in exchange for nothing, you get something, other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. It appears like a lot of the theme for the provision of housing is more geared towards affordability. Either one of you explored anything with regards to using accessory dwelling units and taking advantage of like the SB9 legislation?
Yes. So our very first two funds, Fund 1 and Fund 2, were value add rehab renovations. And what we're doing, we're using SB9 to go back and add ADUs in those funds. We have around 55 ADUs kind of across, let's say, 10 to 15 properties that are currently in works.
So, question here, yeah.
Actually, both you and Andy were discussing the problem of increasing interest rates. But you have you're a private equity fund as well, right? Have you noticed that the institutions are cutting back on their commitment to you because they would have to liquidate other assets at a higher interest rate? And they want to avoid taking loss? This would be for the institutional investors.
No, I think you're going back to like BlackRock and all of them where the office portfolio has kind of, been devalued to 50%, so they don't have, no, so we get check up front when we're raising the fund. But I think you bring up a great point. What happens is, if the fund was raised 2 years ago, right, and we believed we could build 2,000 units, given what the interest rates were then, and the fund is currently still being deployed, looking at what the interest rate landscape is now, we now build fewer units in that fund. Yeah, so we have to raise more equity, to kind of complete the number.
Okay. Well, I've got Jacobson, one more question, thank you, Joe. Thank you guys so much for this, this is such a great launch of the series, so happy to be here. I'm curious on the business side of it, how you guys find your residents, how you guys find the most vulnerable population. Yes. What is the waiting list look like, and maybe some of the vetting process, how difficult the barrier of entry is for this waiting list.
You wanna go first? Sure, okay.
So as part of as Joe was talking about, our she's in section 8, subsidies on per end. The subsidies that I have are not section 8, they're through the County Department of Health Services, LA County Department of Health Services, and they sort of created their own version of a section 8 type of program specifically for their population. And so within Department of Housing for Health Services, there is a division called Housing for Health, and they created this subsidy program. And within Housing for Health, there are a few different programs, and 2 of the programs are my partners. One of them who specializes in the medical complexities, and one of them called the Office of Diversion and Reentry, that focuses on our residents who have mental health and justice background. And so those 2 programs do the initial vetting process and send us folks to fill out each unit.
Yeah, so very similar to Andy, what you said. One of the things at SOLA is that we have a wait list of residents who want to get into the SOLA building. And the reason is, these are hardworking moms and dads who are looking for a safe place to raise their kids at the end of the day. And the reason why they want to build with SOLA Impact is because of the social impact arm and the wraparound services that the social impact brings together. And there are 4 pillars of social impact. So one is access to affordable housing, which is what me and my team kind of work on, bringing affordable housing. Second is access to technology and education, which happens through the Solar Tech Center and the Beehive. Number 3 is access to low-cost capital for Black and brown entrepreneurs who are starting their own businesses. Number 4 is pathways to home ownership. We're working on a project, and we have a grant from California Energy Commission's. We are going to build at-cost homes. And there is a program that our residents sign up for at the tech center, where they go through the financial literacy program. Part of the land rent goes towards the escrow, SOLA matches that amount, and eventually they move into their own home. That SOLA is building and will be sold to them at cost. We have programmed with Silicon Valley Bank, who's helping us bring that program to the residents. And the goal is to really help them create this intergenerational and help them build and create intergenerational. Yeah. So, I'll add one more thing before we leave, and I want to end it on a high note. So when I was building the project at Avalon and Gage, and if you drive around the streets of South Los Angeles, unless you come in a helicopter, you will exactly see what the situation is. And I would go visit the site, and every day I saw a mom and a little girl in the car, they lived off the car that's parked on the sidewalk. Today, they're moved into the unit. So when I'm touring the investors, when I see that little girl running in the corridors, this is what me and everybody at SOLA kind of lives for and works hard for. And, you know, that little girl comes to the tech center where she comes and gets, you know, involved in video games and the technology, but we also have something called SOLA Scholars Program, where SOLA provides scholarship to the kids in the community we serve. It's open to everyone, not just our residents, but when I look at that roster of scholars, some kids are going to Harvard, some kids are going to USC, some kids are going to, you know, just amazing schools. And SOLA has like a dedicated, what we call the scholar mom, paid for by SOLA, but she makes sure that the kids are, you know, working hard, keeping the GPAs, you know, at the right levels, and eventually help them get into the workforce. So I'll end with that.
That's
but
amazing. Echo, Richard, Andy, thank you so much for this wonderful panel. And, thank you again all for coming. Mark your